Jane Hobson, editor at PAX International magazine. And today I'm joined by Joe Leader, CEO of APEX and IFSA. Thanks for joining me today, Joe.
Jane, thanks so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Fantastic. So I thought we could start today by talking about the Biden relief bill that was recently signed off on. In my research, it looks like it allocates $14 billion for airlines, $8 billion for airports, and $1 billion for contractors. So I thought it might be useful to hear from you, maybe some examples of what contractors means in this scenario. Does that apply to suppliers, or who specifically qualifies as a contractor?
Certainly. So in the updated relief bill, the suppliers, anyone that brings anything on and off the aircraft in terms of product, whether it's physical or content, can apply as a supplier, and they can utilize the funds accordingly. It is for their U.S. subsidiary. So it cannot be an international company that has, let's say 95% of their employees externally and 5% here. They only would get to apply in that instance for 5%. But it's worded in such a way where there's a great advantage to all of our members across both APEX and IFSA to take advantage of the bill. And this, we hope, is the last one that is needed. So that's the dream, and I'm sticking to it.
Absolutely. So that kind of leads into what my next question was going to be, actually. There were two earlier federal aid packages, and those have expired. American and United Airlines had issued some furlough notices to some, I think, 27,000 or so employees. So those have since kind of been called back. APEX hopes that it's the last one. So, does APEX believe that this will help protect economy and workers through to the end of the pandemic and through to recovery? What are the thoughts on that?
I think this will get us back to when we're in real recovery mode. The speed of vaccinations in the US has been going at such a great clip that we really should have a wonderful summer. Multiple airlines have already indicated on a month-by-month basis that they're already cash flow positive. That's great to see. We need to see that continue. As our world returns to normal, that's the one unknown factor, is that your long haul international flights, how quickly will those return? Will passengers feel confident in taking and booking those? I believe so long as the borders are opened and that there's no mandatory, basically stay-at-home quarantine, that people will be wanting to take those international trips because they have 2 years a pent-up desire to travel now to put in just a few months this year.
Absolutely. I know I'm looking forward to it myself. So I was looking a little bit around, the TSA, for example, and it looks like numbers are down in terms of traveler throughput than they were obviously in 2019, but they're up quite significantly as they were this time. And I looked yesterday, so that day in 2020. So it looks like there are more people traveling. What do you think this indicates for the pace of recovery, or for where the industry is at in recovery right now?
Well, the numbers are about 2/3 of what they were historically in 2019. And for where we are today, that's extremely good. It shows that there's a lot of pent-up demand. As I've gone to the airport, I've noticed one major change, and that is that while security lines remain reasonable, there are very few places that are open inside airports. So now you're seeing really long lines for the food places that are open. So I'm hoping that the entire infrastructure around the airport itself, that more and more restaurants open and more spaces open so that we can continue to maintain social distance while people eat and while they're going through the airport experience.
Right, and while they enjoy the travel. So it seems to be that discussion within the industry right now is that things will hopefully pick up in the second half of this year, in the second half of 2021. And I want to hear, is APEX hearing the same thing from its members? Is there this kind of hope and positivity throughout the industry from APEX's perspective?
It gets revving, and you see lots of advanced bookings, especially in the United States. And then in the UK, you'll have a government official say, oh, we're not going to be able to travel till much later this summer. And then you see bookings go down. What we can't afford for our world is a roller coaster ride. I mean, we need to be told this is the plan. This is what, unless things go badly, this is what we're going to stick to, and give people more certainty. They want to know that they can travel this summer, when they can travel this summer, and hopefully where they can travel this summer. Our airlines have come up with some really ingenious schemes where you can basically book a guaranteed vacation in the Caribbean, for example, from Virgin Atlantic, and they'll fly you to an airline to a destination that does not have a required quarantine and is not in the British red zone, for example, or yellow zone. So you can go back and forth easily. That's what people need. If they're going to take their family on vacation, they need as much certainty as possible. I believe that on a worldwide basis, we're going to see more and more of that. We're seeing some great news come forward on the travel passes and how more countries are opening up to those that have been vaccinated, just without additional testing on top of it.
Okay, so speaking of vaccinations and maybe travel in general, what is the stance from APEX right now on either the safety of travel and vaccinations in general?
Well, customers should travel when they're ready to do so. That's an individual choice for everyone. And while we
Yeah.
want to encourage travel, we want people to do it mindfully. My wife is a medical doctor, will still not eat indoors in restaurants, but she will travel because she knows how very safe it is on an airplane. And flight attendant numbers, in terms of number of flight attendants around the world that have been infected by COVID-19 in their duties, is so infinitesimal. It proves the hypothesis that has really been taken by our industry as to how safe air travel is. Putting that aside for a moment, from our perspective, we really want to encourage, it's not about a permanent solution. This is really about having temporary health credentials that are digitally stored. So when people use the word health passport, that's not something that resonates with me. My passport is the document that identifies me as a citizen that I use to always go from border to border. In the case of a temporary digital health credential, it's what's needed to take us through COVID-19. For many travelers, it will mean vaccination proof. For some travelers, it will mean a negative PCR test or a negative rapid test. But there needs to be a consistent way that travelers can show that they've gone through the necessary steps and that they're able to go on their journey without any worry. When on a recent trip, when you're traveling internationally, it's a little bit unnerving when you're taken to an unknown place with an unknown doctor and you hope that everything comes back in the right time. And when I came back into the country, in addition to the check made by the airline on the outbound, there also was a random check here in the US. And for them to be looking at foreign documents, it takes them a while. And we need a simpler solution so that for passenger throughput, that people can really know this person was vaccinated, was tested, whatever is needed to prove the transit, we need to make it easy so that we can keep people safer.
And like you said, having that certainty, I think, of travel too, will partly be what encourages passengers to get back in the air and to feel really confident. So I guess I also want to know if there's any update, and I think you may have touched on this, but what kind of support the association would like to see from different governments?
Sure. We're seeing we made a request to the Biden administration with A4A and IATA and a number of associations. We would like to know in the US, for example, the battle plan for opening global travel. And we'd like that plan to come by the end of April, and May 1st was the requested date for this. But we want it to be a roadmap to show that international travelers can come to and transit via the US if they meet the following criteria. We want it to be one where, as travelers go on their journey, they're not really looking, they just don't want to get stuck. And we want it to be a smooth process for everyone. And so I believe that IATA's Travel Pass and some of the other digital health credentials are going to be an essential tool to make it so that people can travel with greater certainty. It's been a little bit more touch and go in some parts of the world, for example, with the UK or the EU. And this week, there was the idea that travel to Australia might not be open till 2024. And when I read that, I pray not, because I love going to Australia. Our world needs connectivity. But when you set the threshold for COVID allowance at zero, it's very hard for governments to think otherwise. But that's all going to be taken in due course. I just hope that our world opens up safely as soon as possible.
Right. And I don't know if you've been doing more business travel or more like leisure travel. But a question that I want to know is, how does Apex feel about this idea that has been circulating a little bit that when things do return to travel, or when passengers return to travel rather, that it will likely be more leisure travel than business because people have become accustomed to Zoom meetings such as this one. What is the kind of apex thought on that, or even just your own thought, Joe?
I think you're going to see a real mix. Number one, the reason there's so much leisure travel right now is because people are really trying to make up for lost time. And I think that will continue to be a very strong trend. For business travelers, because I've done both business and personal travel, I would say they're looking to make trips that are impactful to meet in person. For example, if the places of business are not open or if there are not conferences, then it's harder to justify to travel. I think that the world of Zoom and Microsoft Teams and others, what has been created will create a little bit of a change in paradigm. You won't go on a flight just to see one person, but we will go on flights for business, to see, for meetings, for groups, to see multiple clients. That will come back with a vengeance. I think what might be ramped down a little bit is a little bit of this, oh, I just need to meet with this person for 30 minutes or an hour. That might not be worth a flight in the near term, especially with COVID. So I think, we've all gotten used to a new Zoom filled world, and that's a nice thing in some respects. And in others, we want to see travel return, especially for meetings. There's no way, there's nothing that quite beats getting together live and in person for business people.
Yes, absolutely. And I have yet to actually meet you in person. So I'm looking forward to that. And
I
I think,
love it.
and I think also, like you said, making up for lost time when it comes to leisure travel, but for an industry that I would say is so based on really enjoying our time together when we all do meet at conferences, I don't, I don't think that that will go away, in the long term. I think that at some point we'll all eventually need and want to be together again to see these new innovations come to life, to see everything that we've missed out on in the past, year or so.
That's a great point, Jane. And one great piece of news that we received this week is California is opening up convention centers this summer to capacity limits of 5,000, but effective October 1st, it will be unlimited. And since we have APEX IFSA Expo in October, it's going to be wonderful to know that there will not be restrictions, and that's going to be perfect timing. As you know, we're only at the 3,000 or so mark, and that's what we're anticipating. But it's nice to know that we're going to be well within the safety ranges, and I think you're going to see some trends. I'm curious if people are going to fly over to the United States to start getting vaccine shots once we've met everything for our population base here. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the course of the year.
Absolutely. And like you said, excellent timing for these shows that are coming up in October. So how about an update on the APEX Health Safety Standard powered by Simplifying? Is there any new information there? I did a little bit of research. I saw that some more airlines have joined. I think there's about 18 at this point. So what's the update with the Health Safety Standard?
For the second quarter, we had our medical review board. These are medical doctors from airlines, from outside the industry, the UV experts, the health and disease experts get together, and we made some significant changes. We made modifications. For example, one thing that we are recommending to all of our airlines worldwide is to put notifications not to take off masks in airline restrooms, or for that matter, really any public restroom is not the place to take off a mask because COVID-19 can live in the digestive system for up to 14 days longer than it can in the respiratory system. And that's a very important place to wear a mask. So that's in addition to the wash your hands for 20-second signs. You'll be seeing some airlines put on new signs that indicate don't take off your mask just because you're alone in the restroom. That's not the intention. It's still a shared space and one you need to be mindful of. And the other ones is based off the latest peer-reviewed information, more and more weight is being given to aerosol transmission and less to touch. We had done that in the initial launch in Q1, but we continue to change the weighting so that we're really thinking about customer safety from the possibility of a spread perspective and what airlines are doing proactively to keep their customers as healthy and safe as possible. So you'll see, and the other major change we're doing is we've now made it, since we're doing quarterly updates with all of our airlines worldwide, we've made it so that the system is more fully automated, so that when you go in as an airline, it will auto update to the new scheme. It will show you where you went up, where you went down, and what you can do to improve health safety for your passengers. It's great to have the updates, and we'll continue to see it evolve over the next coming quarters. So the airlines really have received it well.
Yes, yes. And I know that it's a passenger-centric like health safety standard. I understand that that's where it comes from. So I think it's great that making what, could be perceived as a small adjustment, like, leave your mask on when you're in a public restroom. I think that's a great one, because from a passenger perspective, I think that, sometimes there's this idea that you're in your own space, right? Like, so it's safe to kind of be alone in there. And that's a great reminder of how the standard helps really ensure that passengers are safe on the end-to-end journey in every possible physical situation. So that's awesome. And what has the interest been from airlines? It's a significant increase since we spoke last, the number of airlines that have the certification. So how has that taken off?
We actually had to move to a more automated system because we had a throughput issue, and that we were spending
That's
weeks.
great.
Yeah, that's great. We were spending weeks with airlines as they would. We've had over a third of airlines make tweaks to their health safety standards because they want, and as they go through gold, platinum, diamond, they're always wanting to be at the next level, and we applaud that, because if for customers we can make it incrementally safer, that's really valuable, because we really need to keep this about passengers, their wellness, in terms of, really getting to their destination and getting back home as safely as possible. So we're happy with that. The automated system will take away the throughput issue we've been having and make weeks of review much shorter in period of time for airlines to make their improvements and tweaks as we move along.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for joining me today, Joe. It was really awesome to speak with you.
Jane, thanks so much, and thanks for all your work at PAX.
Of course. Again, I'm Jane Hobson, editor at PAX International magazine. Today, I've been speaking with Dr. Joe Leader, the CEO of APEX and IFSA. We've discussed the latest in industry recovery, the Biden relief bill, and the APEX health safety standard. Thank you so much.